Welcome to this Mastery Empowerment course from New Earth One Network. This is designed exclusively for your higher self connection and embodiment. Welcome everyone. Thank you so much for being here. I'm Loren Gailey and today is a 111222 day and we are excited to be here balancing the feminine and masculine energies, the divine masculine and feminine energies with the help today of the Arcturians whose frequencies are brought forward by Jean Ang. Hi Jean, thank you so much for being here.
Hi, Lauren, and so glad to be here. And hi, everyone. It's great to be connecting with everyone here in the new year to kick off the great patterns and energies and to talk about the divine feminine, divine masculine.
Yes, it's an interesting year. Sometimes it seems almost as if the old paradigm is so done and over with that the old rules don't apply in any way. Are you noticing any shifts like that in your life with systems or upgrades? How's that going for you?
Oh yeah, definitely. I think just myself and talking to people, and of course, it's hard not to look at the news or just see what's going on the planet or tuning in. And I feel like speaking of maybe the framework of timelines, there's many, we think of just the near future, like many possibilities, like when we make a decision, at least we know there's two possible timelines. We could go to a restaurant or just eat at home, like something simple like that. But of course, there's much more complex things that are happening or decisions. And then there's things that are happening that we know we're making that we're not even conscious of when it becomes more complex. But I think because everyone is much more fluid now, things aren't as set, it's a lot more difficult to foresee like solid timelines. And that's kind of a new feeling, I think. It can be disorienting, I think. It's a little bit like jumping out of a plane. So, kind of have that free floating feeling that there's not so much solid ground under you, subconsciously because the timelines are so much fluid. But I think more and more people are getting used to that, and I think that's a great thing. I think the spirit world is a lot like that. So the help of spiritual consciousness and higher beings such as the Arcturians and other people's guides can be really helpful during this time.
Okay, beautiful.
Yeah, that's great.
Bear with me as we work with our technology here. This is a beautiful case in point with the technology. I've noticed a big upgrade in systems already this year, and it is interesting with the timelines. So thank you for sharing on that. So we're talking about really the 222 codes.
Mm.
And in numerology, this is the divine feminine. And so here we are in this year, 2022, and we've got and we are being supported by the energies of the divine feminine. So when we're centered in the heart and we are nurturing or exhibiting the qualities of the divine feminine, whether that's compassion or using our intuitive abilities or being spontaneous, those are really the qualities that are coming forward with the two codes.
Mm.
Are you familiar with any two codes in all of your esoteric studies?
Oh yeah, yeah. I definitely have been feeling like the spiritual beings can, definitely come through. Or we might like focus on the angelic beings, but any spiritual consciousness, even ourselves, can come through numbers that might show up on the clock. Or a lot of times, I'm timing like transmissions, and I'll just look over, and there'll always be an interesting sequence. It's usually because there's like four numbers because I'm usually timing like 50-minute transmissions. It's like 24-24, or like you said, 11-11, which is very now used. I think our consciousness is coming through that. But I think they call them doorways esoterically. So you could have a statue, it could be like a spiritual doorway. If you have like a medicine Buddha or a white Tara or Mother Mary statue, actually that consciousness of Mother Mary can come through that statue. And then, so then the neat idea here, which I think more and more people are tuning into this, is that a number sequence, however it shows up, particularly if it's dynamic, like on a clock, which is changing, could be a way that like angelic beings or spiritual consciousness can come through. And I think even ourselves, because now we are spiritual beings, just happening to have a physical body now, kind of temporarily, which is beautiful. But we could actually communicate through numbers to each other, which is very cool idea too.
Interesting. Yeah, recently just the synchronicities of the numbers is very interesting. There, this whole year of 222, and
Mm.
today being 111, again, that represents the balance of the divine masculine and the divine feminine. But it was interesting to watch how many of those codes came through when we were doing a special event at the very start of this year. And you
Mm.
just have to smile when you see those things
Yeah.
because, or just take a moment to tune in,
Mm.
right? And see what that message is.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I was just going to add, like what you were saying about the divine feminine coming through now in this year. Like the word that was coming to me was the fluidity. That's characteristic of the divine feminine, just like you said, the intuitive or spontaneity is being kind of in the same resonant field. But I think like this idea that I had been thinking about with the timelines being much more fluid and not set, globally in our superconsciousness, because we're all interconnected. So even though we don't know other people are making their decisions, like if we're going to meet someone in the near future who we don't even consciously know, they're making decisions so that we like eventually will, and we're making them so we eventually like meet up. And so I think like having the divine feminine patterns come through allows us, some guidance in this sort of much more fluid environment, that's a big characteristic of the divine feminine is the fluidity, or even water being kind of a representative of that elementally.
Yes, and so when I shared earlier that it feels like the old matrix is gone, and I want to use the word flux. It felt like in the beginning of this year, for me personally, this notion of flux, being flexible,
Hmm.
things change. That is the divine feminine that you're talking about. And it's interesting because we live in a calendar world where we have to show up for appointments like this, but yet the creation that can happen in those times of flux or by not following the old patterns, that's the creation that we're talking about. And so, what an empowering year for great change. On one side, in the outer world, we see in the 3D that there's a lot of dense stuff still being cleared,
Hmm.
especially in the collective. But in our spiritual community and from the higher realms, we're being shown that we are being supported in new ways of collaboration. So, what are your thoughts on all of this? I mean, that is hopeful if we can maintain the light within us in the face of everything. What is your protocol for that?
Oh yeah, I love that. And I think everyone is like developing, yes, their kind of new operating system. We're all being upgraded, maybe like you said, nudged in a very strong way to upgrade, regardless how you feel about that. But I think we all are upgrading, and like you said, and even subconsciously or superconsciously, that's happening. But one of the things that I find interesting, and this also is along these esoteric lines, is whatever plane, the plane of existence, meaning dimensions. And here maybe we've been using a multi-dimensional model. But so on the physical plane, it seems like things, like you said, are much more in flux. They could be in a kind of what we might call a dissolution period. Things are kind of dissolving out. And we see that in our lives in various degrees. But that means in the inner plane, like the next plane related, it's a creative cycle. And so like in the inner world, or like you said, the spiritual world that's supporting us, there's much more creative energies than because that's this yin yang balance, masculine and feminine balance. And so then if you tap into that creative energy or force in the inner world, like we've been doing so many more mastery empowerment classes. I was just reviewing the years we've been together. I think we started out like I would just meet up every quarter, I think, with you, and now we do one like every month. And actually, meeting more people online, because most people have gone online, and so there's a chance to take that what's on one plane, a dissolution cycle. That means there's a creative plane on the inner cycle, and tap into that, and then kind of produce even more during this time.
Yes, that inner cycle. And that's why it's so important. We've been saying for, decades now, hold the vision of New Earth, because it's that vision that you and the Arcturians teach us in the causal planes that actually becomes manifest. And this is the work of all the light workers who are joining us. Isn't that amazing? The beautiful work that everyone in our community is doing just by holding that light. So here we are in this new year, and we're getting ready to do another Mastery Empowerment course with you. And as we do this, this one's interesting because it too is a balance, and it's a balance with how we move in the world, in our physical body, in the way that we sleep, including our dreams, and also the way that we nourish ourselves. So, can you share with us the importance of these transmissions that are coming up, and why now? How did this come to you, Jean?
Yeah. Well, I think in the new year, it's like the beginning of any. Well, we could these of course are random, like how we set a time frame. But of course, collectively, we are in a new year or a new part of a year. It's great to set down patterns, particularly fundamental patterns that then will just kind of work subconsciously, superconsciously throughout the entire year. So a lot of traditions will do sort of prosperity events, or clearing, and then some kind of prosperity or energizing of new intentions. And I think we had done some of those. And then this is along kind of this peak performance line that I think we've had other mastery empowerment classes. But here I think it just to go to something very still esoteric and fundamental, and then the title is very practical, the eat, sleep, and move. But back to kind of more even the sacred geometry, you sort of have like in the circle, like if you go around a circle, particularly clockwise, usually if you start at the top to the, like say 12 o'clock to 6 o'clock, and you're moving down, that's usually a creative cycle. Like we've done some of these in other classes, but that's kind of north to east to south, if you put north at 12 and south at 6. Anyways, if you get that feeling that you're going down the clock, that's usually a creative cycle. And then here, if we were to think of it practically in terms of this upcoming Mastery Empowerment class, that I would call is like basically movement, like we're putting things out into the world. And that can be just in our own system. And then from 6 to noon, back 6 to 12, you're sort of basically is like a dissolution cycle. It's sort of like things have to kind of go back into the spirit world that are manifested. And so in this case, it's sort of like the eating or the digesting. We sort of have to reabsorb things in a sense. And then the interesting thing about the circle is the middle. The middle is a very like esoterically important point. Like we've talked about biogeometry, and they really focus on this vibration called the centered energy. It's really the energy of the center, which shows up as like a gold, violet, and that's spiritual transmission energy. But that centered energy is where we rest. And from the center is also the witness of everything that's going on. So another kind of force of nature that's kind of part of the sacred geometry is if you think of the cyclone, this is like everything speeded up almost to light speed. And you see the tremendous amount of power when you go in a circle like that, which is a cyclone, is a force of nature with so much power. And you're basically going through creative cycles and destructive or dissolution cycles over and over. But in the center of a cyclone is completely still, which is tremendously interesting manifestation of this sacred geometry in nature. You could feel like you're in a beautiful calm day, like kind of like this background that we both have of nature. It's very still, and that's kind of the rest. When we get to this more practical aspect of the transmission, I'll kind of refer back to the sacred geometry, but that's where you're resting. So you have to have all three components.
Okay, very interesting. The sacred geometry of it all, and you will explain more of that when we go into a process here. I wanted to have you share more on each of these aspects too. So again, this is Arcturian performance transmissions that we're talking about, a little mini course today with Jean. And so what I love about, okay, the reset then would be the sleep, right? The sleep and how we can work with our dream space and pay attention to our dream space. And that's very interesting. So, can you share more about the science research behind sleep and performance?
Yeah. Well, I think more and more that's become important. So we're now where we went, like I started off with this more very esoteric idea of sacred geometry, multidimensionality, which I think is great. It's a good because we're talking about patterns to refer back to. But like now shifting all the way to the other side, which is just the like downright practical aspect of these three levels. And I'm glad you started with sleep, or maybe I also kind of felt that is a portion that people are beginning to realize. Maybe it's almost too self-evident, but there's a thought form I think that was out there, probably in certain cultures. I'm sure ours here, like if you live in Western culture, America, or pretty much anywhere modern culture on the planet, there's this idea like if I work hard, somehow I'm morally better, and if I'm not sleeping as much, somehow I'm like, there was this kind of like overly hard work ethic, and then sleep was kind of like really brought down to a minimum as like almost like a badge of work. I don't know if that's still in place, but all the science goes against that, and particularly if you're trying to actually be more productive, that creative cycle, you actually need to go back to the center. And on a practical level, you need to get like adequate sleep. It's not necessarily time. Time is kind of usually used as a marker. Sometimes it's also depth, which we can talk about. So you could have like a 20-minute nap, but if you go really deep and go through like all the different stages of sleep, that's probably more, of course, people would find the self-evident on reflection, more effective for refreshing, recovering than like, let's say, 8 hours of kind of bumpy sleep where you're not really going that deep. And so it's not necessarily always linear time, although that is one factor. So I think this aspect of focusing on that, even on a very practical level, will make all our output much more stronger. And I'll just say a couple of markers, not like citing the research, but depression, memory, and general overall mood, physical performance, all the way to like, professional athletes being tested. I'll mention the Stanford study later. All improve when you get more sleep. It's just like a given. But the question is like, we can talk about it, how you practically do that in this day and age where there's so many other things you could be doing. And just to say, the transmission is meant to help all these levels. Yeah.
Yes, all these levels of that we're going to talk about. Hold on, I've got a little glitch here. There we go. All right. I love the fact that you mentioned the 20-minute, even a 20-minute nap, if it's done in a way that allows you to go through those cycles. It reminds me of, living in Taiwan in my younger days, and everyone in the office would take a lunch break, a nap break at lunch, literally the lights would be turned off and everyone would put their head down on their desk, and that was nap time. And that's an ancient culture. And we also have the siestas in Latin America and other places around the world. So somehow in our Western world, we've given up that sleep to work hard. So we're busting through that paradigm. It's wonderful to see that it's coming back and that it's related to the dream state and the creative state. And I know we've talked about this before, but isn't it interesting that oftentimes in that dream state, and I know we talk about this in the yoga, dream and sleep yoga course, but that dream state, sometimes we are working on things that we are bringing forward in the world or going through learning curves from the 3D world and really, combining that causal world with our 3D physical world. That's interesting.
Oh yeah, yeah, you brought up a great point. And so just to kind of touch base, like yes, so there's kind of these transmissions that are very practically called sleep and then eating, or I was trying to think of a more interesting word than that, but it's kind of digesting and then the movement. But back to the sleep. So all of those are being looked at multidimensionally. And I kind of started out by mentioning like the physical level of just getting more sleep and the effects. And that's sort of what the science backs up now. But like what you just had moved into is now these multidimensional effects, meaning like emotionally, mentally, like being able to review or do things, and then causally and spiritually, like even visiting other astral planes. And then finally, even at the divine level, which is the sleep yoga, you can enter the, our like what is called the base clear light consciousness. So you could actually like even meditate with the enlightened consciousness during your sleep. So there's all these other multidimensional avenues to explore during sleep, which we'll talk about in the transmissions help. But just to say, like one of the upgraded things that we had worked with the dream and sleep yoga, like you mentioned in the previous, I think 2 mastery empowerment classes, is speaking of timelines. Since there's so many timelines, let's say someone has a very important meeting in the next 3 days. Before you go to sleep, you can ask your astral body, or like we kind of have this technique in Arcturian healing method called the double. You can ask your astral body to go through all the possible timelines or a set of timelines of that meeting. So like there's all these iterations that are possible that could happen in that meeting. And what your astral body does is it kind of either you can think of it as it downloads the information of all those possible iterations so that you kind of almost did the meeting like maybe 5 or 6 times, but in all the different permutations. And you're kind of doing that during your sleep, or at least downloading that information, so that by the time you do it in the physical reality, is as if you had rehearsed. We do it as like, we think of it like maybe in peak performance as rehearsing. In this multidimensional way of using timelines, it's as if you went through like 6 iterations of it. So it's almost like you're 6 times experienced by the time you get to the physical version. So you could do this in your sleep too. Or you just set the intention, even if you don't remember, actually having gone through the experience.
And so if we're working on those multidimensional levels, we may not even be consciously aware of that multidimensional work that we're doing. But the intention, would you say that the intention, that's what makes intention so powerful? Because it's a carrier wave of our thought. So
Oh, yes.
that goes multidimensional. I just got that now. I
Oh,
know
yeah.
others did too. Yeah.
Oh yeah, great point. And I think that's a good point so people can relax into these techniques that at first, I think a lot of people here really enjoy that. For maybe someone new to it could almost sound outlandish. I know it might a little bit to myself when I first heard of it, but there's actually a book just to know that there's precedent to this. And many people might have learned these techniques in other like mystery school, but it's called Invisible Helpers. It was by a theosophist. Let's see. I'll have to think of his name, but it was basically you help angelic beings and other spiritual beings during your sleep to help places that are having problems in the world. And we've kind of talked about this before, but there's a very important, so you just say, just to give this idea, another idea before you go to sleep, like I'm going to go help whoever needs help in the inner world, and these invisible helping teams. You just make that intention. And then you could also say like, and I'll remember whatever is important to me when I wake up. But he says very specifically that you don't have to remember anything that you've been doing to be effective. That your superconsciousness will be doing that, but sometimes you remember, sometimes you don't. It was just very helpful for him to have said that. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, because I know that's another big question too. How do we know and do we have to remember? But again, the power of that intention, and we know that with sound healing, even the intention is carried on the sound, and that's a vital, important aspect. So that is the multidimensionality of intention and how that works. Okay, all right, so in the eat, sleep, move, then the eating aspect, this is interesting. Can you talk about those transmissions?
Yeah. I think in many respects, of course, I think I'll just start with the multidimensional model. We have these things called she's, or they usually like, we've been using it with this seven planes of nature model, which is, I've been talking about the physical, etheric, emotional, mental, causal, spiritual, and divine levels. But in like, if people have studied yoga from like the Vedic or Indian tradition or other mystery schools, they have these, they sometimes call them the subtle bodies, or they in yoga they use the term sheaths. They actually like almost like a corn husk. You have a sheath, and you may have like four or five depending on the model, and then these sheaths are made out of whatever substance on that dimension you are absorbing. So if you could call this transmission the absorption transmission, just so that we're more conscious, like on our physical body, we probably know this, but maybe on reflection, like whatever we're absorbing through like eating, physical eating, it basically becomes us on the physical plane. It doesn't become our true self, but it becomes our physical vehicle. So, it may take some time, but over time, whatever we've been absorbing becomes our physical body. But the same thing at every of those dimensions. So like our etheric body basically becomes what we're absorbing or letting in and exchanging on the etheric level, and then so on with the emotional, mental, causal, spiritual, and divine. So when you start to think about that, you can just be more free or more mindful about, oh, what am I absorbing on the emotional level? Because it then becomes your astral sheath. And that's why clairvoyance, like the astral body changes moment to moment. Like here, I'm a little bit excited, so maybe there's little sparks of whatever going on, but there's like an overlying frequency, you could say, of what I'm absorbing emotionally on my day-to-day level that people who are very sensitive could tune into, like kind of like the overall fabric of that's kind of what I've been digesting emotionally. And so when we become more mindful or even just have that framework, then we can think like, oh yeah, maybe I should, okay, this gratitude idea, like, yes, what kind of food is that on the emotional level versus, oh, I'm worried about, I just saw the news, like, and then I'm kind of eating that emotionally. And so it becomes, we have the metaphor of eating physically, and we can apply that to all the other subtle bodies.
Yeah, that's interesting. So when we talk about, I mean, that's interesting with the emotions and being in a room of people and being empathic and feeling that, and then also being very responsible for what we are letting in. But it also brings up food that we eat out in the world, restaurants or cooked by other people or even ourselves,
Yeah.
and how there's a practice of blessing the food, which
Yeah.
began by prayer, right? The prayer over our meals. And so that's actually kind of helping to uplift the vibration of what we're putting in our food too.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
That's great. I was thinking about some of maybe it was getting downloaded at the time, this morning, particularly about some of these ideas. But I was just remembering like the food example is great. The multidimensional aspect of physical food is great. I'm glad you brought that up. I'm sure some people are very interested in and like tuned into that. But it's great to see these examples in our own life. But of course, like let's say you're eating some granola, it actually has seven planes in it. That maybe people weren't like aware of that, or maybe they were. Like it has a physical body, like you have the physical granola, but as of course it has an etheric, emotional, mental, causal, spiritual, and divine plane. So, like you said, for example, whoever made that granola has transmitted on when however they were feeling, or maybe they made it out of love, or maybe they're just like thinking this is my job. It kind of transmits into the emotional body of the granola. And so people who are sensitive, a lot of us aren't paying attention. Even myself, I'm just going to eat the granola, enjoy it. But people who are very sensitive and tuned in, they will kind of can know who made it emotionally. Or you could tune in with your third eye. And then just as another example, I remember in Sedona, it's called a chocolate tree. I don't know if you've been there. It's this great raw food, nature food place. And their food is so filled with prana that you just get filled up with just a small bit of granola, so to speak. Like you're just all filled up. You just won't be able to eat that much of it physically because the pranic element is so high. So that's just another example of this. Mhm.
Okay, that's very cool. What's the name of that
A
place?
chocolate tree. It actually has a living tree, and it was built around a tree. I'm sure it's people who went to
Wow.
Sedona here, but yeah, definitely go to Chocolate Tree. It's like I'll find, maybe I'll put in the link. Yes, and Ledbetter is the name of the book by the Invisible Helpers. Thanks, Kim. But yeah, Chocola and then tree. Yes, it's very good.
Wow. So then, we're talking about transmissions here that will help us, but how would you add prana to your food?
Mhm.
Again, intention.
Oh yeah, yeah. Yeah, okay. So I was thinking about this, and I'm sure there's great experts on this. But like even like a macrobiotic diet has this framework. People who studied that from Japan. But the idea here, there's two ways. One, of course, is that's why even in the physical nutrition framework, of course, living food like fruits, vegetables, things that are like maybe like let's say uh, it wasn't a bar that was synthesized like a power bar or protein bar, but living food that of course we can see comes from the earth. It was made by the earth, so it's got all these natural, the subtle bodies are naturally created, and that's probably why it's so healthy for us, not just from a physical like here are the vitamins in it like molecularly, but from all these subtle body levels. Because if you tune into like a piece of fruit versus like I said, like maybe something that was synthetic, like a bar, a granola bar that was made, you can almost see the complexity is completely different on the subtle body level. So that's one thing on the natural level. But you could also, like you said, you could take that bar that was sort of, maybe it tastes good or sweet, but was sort of more synthesized, and you could do a number of things. When you do the blessing, when you send the energy out of your hands, that's etheric energy. But if you tune into the higher, more subtle planes, like you are very thankful, you start to move to the emotional, mental plane. Like you realize, like if you go to the causal plane, if you have the realization, like, wow, look how many things had to come together to put that like protein bar together. Like someone had to think about it, manufacturers had to come to it, someone at Trader Joe's had to sell it, and you're very thankful for all that interdependence. You're now blessing it on the causal level. So then, you could transform that into something that's, very beautiful to ingest, like you said.
All right, beautiful. Thank you for sharing that. I know there's many people who do that work, and it is all about the multidimensionality and how we work with our own multidimensional aspects. Okay, so then we're going to do another transmission again, just letting everyone know we're going to start that shortly. But let's talk about the third item, the third transmission that you specialize in, and that would be the movement.
Mhm.
And I find this interesting because whether we like to move our body or not, it's just something, it's some kind of movement, whether you're into sports, weightlifting, walking, or just something. Maybe it's just as simple as yoga or prana breath work like that. But movement, tell us more about this.
Yeah, we'll go back to the geometry, like the geometry. It's simply like the out breath. So anywhere like we'll like we'll move to a different plane, not the physical one, because that's a little bit straightforward. Also, there's so much thinking about that that comes there's some kind of maybe blocks in there. But if you just think of like on the mental plane, like what am I putting out in my thought form? That's the movement. That's an exercise. Like what kind of
Ah,
thoughts am I putting out? That would be like how the expression. And a lot of that's the whole creative aspect because whatever we're creating in the world, and everyone probably has a very dynamic project, either they've been thinking about, they would like to put out, or they're putting out. Like just even all of us getting together started out as a thought, like, oh, I'd like to join that. That was like you put that out into the universe, and then maybe you showed up here, or you listen to the replay, and we're all in the same vibe and we're creating that vibration that gets put out to others, people who we may or may not, or they may or may not know consciously are connecting, but maybe they have a better sleep tonight just because the vibe is in the environment. So that's it's all about what we're putting out, the creativity, and we will go over like the physical movement, but of course, if you maybe I'll go to the etheric plane, the pranic plane. So they usually call that the opposite of that, congestion. So like if a chakra is spinning, it's basically like my throat chakra is spinning. It's sending energy out and it's absorbing energy out. It's like an energy information exchange. A lot of people probably know this, but the just to demonstrate the point, you need as much equal outward as you can inward. And so if one of them gets if that balance gets off, then this, let's say the balance of projecting outwards gets off, then it becomes what they call congested. And like healers will feel that or try to clear that. And a person may feel that too. They may feel like something's kind of holding them back. And that could be because maybe like a thought form when they were young, like, oh, don't talk. Oh, like I was blocked from speaking my truth. And so, like, when that's released, that's another aspect of the creative or movement.
yes, great. I love that because, sacred geometry, the movement is that creation where creation moved away from itself. So, really, what we are expressing, I love that, being very careful of our thought forms. And so, here's these transmissions. We're going to do a little mini transmission with you, and we'll let you and the Arcturians tell us what we're going to experience. But I love this because they work on us multidimensionally. Do you want to share anything else about how these frequencies are affecting us?
Yeah. I think maybe we'll definitely do a portion of the sleep transmission here with a specific intention first for good physical sleep. I think everyone would love that. Even if you're really sleeping well, it could just be better. But also if you're not sleeping well, that could be a game changer. I'll just say like when I was in graduate school, very intense academic environment. The one secret sauce was I because I had like read a couple books on sleep, was sleeping long enough, and it meant like I slept really early, and that just makes your brain like right up, like for your physical brain, not the multidimensional part, but of course we love the multidimensional stuff, but like intellectual, like really thinking, having to think, it's sleep. There's like no secret anything better than that. So anyways, so the transmission will work on that, and then also I think it'll work on this portion, like for people who want to begin working. I think we're always working in the inner world, even if we're not conscious or making that intention. But to like increase that or make that activity, either increase it or for learning purposes, and make it more conscious so we're aware of what's going on. So I think, and then we'll kind of see what else comes through. But I think it'll be the sleep transmission.
Okay, very interesting. And so when you say earlier, so
Mhm.
go to bed earlier.
Well, yeah. So some of the things which we can talk about too, I think that will happen also definitely in the master empowerment class. Maybe people have questions here, but like some of this, particularly with well, any three of these topics have to do with like just like what are the tricks of the trade, like Okay, sleep. Yes, I know I need to get more sleep because that's probably been like in the news and so forth. But the whole thing is like, how do you get that? Because they're like, now we've got so many good things to do otherwise, like usually the internet or whatever it might be. So what I would do was just I would like be sleeping. I just made myself go to sleep like usually like 9 because I would wake up very early. That was the other thing. Because the other thing that helps your brain, this is very specific for thinking, is exercise, some form of physical exercise, because your brain uses the most amount of oxygen of any organ. So just by getting that movement, particularly in the morning, then the rest of the day was all study and work and like very intellectual things like when I was in graduate school. So I found like I would have a peak for almost like till 3 p.m. Where I just was like really sharp on the brain level. So those were the two things. So I had to go to sleep early to get enough sleep, and then I would make sure I exercised the first thing in the morning. And then you get all those, even though it's difficult during the time of exercise, after a while you get used to it and you really enjoy it. But it's all those hormones and neurotransmitters after you exercise that you can't find any kind of supplement or that will give it in the right balance. And so then you're just all good, So, and then you go to the rest period after that.
Interesting. Okay. So strap on your shoes, get out and do some kind of movement in the morning. Again, I think the ancient cultures know this. We're seeing that. Okay. All right. Wonderful. Well, Jean, we are ready for a transmission, and we invite those watching and listening to sit back and open and receive. Thank you.
Yeah, great. Yeah, so we'd be doing this Arcturian multidimensional sleep or rest or stillness transmission. The particular emphasis to enhance our physical sleep and recovery, particularly if that's something you need in your life. And then also to enhance our multidimensional work in the inner world during sleep, also to remember those aspects that are consciously that it would be helpful for us in that inner world work. Yeah, so we're beginning the first of 3 deepening phases of the Arcturian sleep transmission. And people can just relax and enjoy or bathe in their awareness of the energies or really anything that's coming to mind. Just knowing that your 7 subtle bodies are being bathed in this enhanced energy and glow and positive patterns, mostly from your higher self with the assistance of the Arcturian energies and consciousness. Now we're deepening into a second cycle of the Arcturian sleep transmission. Also, if you have any specific intention over about sleep or rest or recovery or healing or being the center of the cyclone, the stillness, your divine nature, you can set that now. Beginning with the deepening of the second cycle. Here we're also enhancing, there's an aspect of our etheric body that's called the time body or memory body. And it helps to remember our dreams or remember what's going on in the inner world while we sleep so that our brain can become aware of that. So we're enhancing that subtle body. It's called the time body in the etheric. And finally, we're deepening into our third cycle of the Arcturian time transmission. This is connecting us to any so-called invisible helpers, guides, who both can teach us in the inner world while we sleep or who we work with as co-workers, maybe helping other beings on the planet or in other dimensions. So if that's in your motivation or intention, this will be enhancing that. Great, and that ends the transmission there. You can gently but firmly come back to your physical body now, moving your fingers and your toes, coming completely back to your physical body now. When you feel comfortable, you can open your eyes, snap your fingers.
Thank you, thank you, thank you, Jean Eng. That was a real mini experience of the frequencies.
Mm.
And for those who are new to Jean Eng and the Arcturian healing frequencies, we hope that you have felt that. It's very interesting how we get better at feeling the subtle energies. And when you first started, just before you even spoke, when we just closed our eyes, I felt
Mm.
a grounding of the nervous system.
Yeah,
Instead of it all just being out, it was just very centered and
oh,
grounded.
that's great.
Yes,
That's great.
awesome. So we hope that everyone sleeps good tonight and meets up with some invisible helpers.
Yes.
Yes. Let's see, Roberta. Hi, Roberta. Roberta is reporting
Oh,
hot
wow.
feet, really hot feet in the beginning, and felt as if she was being rocked.
Mm.
It was lovely. Very cool. Very cool.
That's cool.
So interesting with the time body. Do you want
Mhm.
to share a little bit more on that? I think that was very interesting.
Yeah, yeah. Like we mentioned, like in that, maybe in the very first mastery empowerment class on the sleep and dream yoga, and people who do dream work, of course, this is a kind of tried and true technique, is that you set your intention to remember your dreams, and then you put a notebook by your side. That's the basic practical technique by your bedstand, and then when you wake up, there's a couple things to add. Don't move is that thing. Maybe I haven't said that, but you don't move and you just sit there and lie there let's say for 2 or 3 minutes, and just try to remember what was happening in your dream state. You may have a snippet. You just kind of go over it, and that's very helpful because if you immediately even get up to start writing out in your notebook, you can lose some things, or you can not remember some other things. So I just wanted to add that. So you try to just be there and kind of just lie there for like 3, 4, 5 minutes and go over whatever happens, and more will come. Then you get up and write. And okay, and so people know that, and we presented that. But if you do that over and over, what's happening in the etheric body, what's happening is the astral body, is going out and doing all these things, our astral body in the astral world, and then it comes back, so-called, back into our physical body. The link from the astral consciousness to our waking consciousness through the brain, that's what there's this etheric structure that allows you to remember. That's why some people are very good at remembering their dreams. They have something in their etheric, which is this time body, that allows them to transfer the astral information that they were doing in the astral world into the brain consciousness, which is the memory, which allows, the conscious awareness. So if you keep doing the remembering every night, even if you don't remember on sometimes, you get hits and sometimes you don't. If you keep doing that, just like you're exercising the muscle, that etheric structure becomes more crystallized or built.
Okay.
Yeah.
And in our experiences with the people that come to the transmissions and the mastery empowerment courses, particularly in the dream and sleep yoga, in those courses that we did, it was interesting to see people beginning to remember their dreams in new ways, or just seeing shifts in that dream state by working with these causal bodies in this way. So I find it really fascinating. And Jean, I would like to say, I'm kind of flying off the cuff here, but let's include the Dream and Sleep yoga course with
Oh, yeah.
this as well. That would be a nice bonus,
Oh, yeah.
because that one, I mean, it will just enhance what we're doing here with this
Oh,
one as
yeah.
well.
That'd
Okay,
be
cool. So that's included. So let's talk then. Do you want to add anything more about the upcoming event? I guess this is coming up in a few weeks yet, so it's in February. The information is in our chat box here, or it's on this webpage, and we're together in 3 sessions. It really is a very intimate space, and it's just nice to be together with everyone. Anything you'd like to share on this?
Yeah, actually, I just wanted to say, like, I did get, there was a very nice book, a self-help book by Tim Rath, I think. And he has the title is, it's not the same order. It's like Eat, Sleep, Move. People might want to check that book out just as a self-help book. We kind of like will be going over those same areas kind of multidimensionally, but I just wanted to kind of put a plug out for that because I think that's where I got the inspiration for the title. So, but speaking of the sleep and dream, I think that the interesting aspect, and this happens during the mastery empowerment classes in general, is even though we're meeting for those 2 hours, what happens is if you also incorporate the sleep and dream practices, and I'm so glad that people will be able to, who haven't seen that. I know a lot of people did do those classes, but who haven't will be able to at least get some taste of that. Is then those 3 days, you're subconsciously always working because the transmissions work on all your subtle bodies in those learnings. But then if you do the practices, you can like kind of distill consciously, oh yeah, what was I doing super consciously or subconsciously, particularly in my sleep state. But even like when what we're talking in our waking state now, there's other parts of our subtle consciousness that are doing things. So it's just a way to kind of, how do I get access to that information consciously? That's really what I think is one way to think of the practices. And so I think that's why even our meetings, I would say, are multidimensional.
Okay, very good. Well, we invite our listeners and viewers to check out the Mastery Empowerment course with Jean Ang. This one is the peak performance transmissions, Eat, Sleep, and Move. And it will include the Dream and Sleep Yoga 1 and 2. That's a really beautiful gift for those who haven't had it. And if you have had it, watch it again. And again, see what happens in the dream space. My dreams have continued to just be incredible, an awareness of when, or just, I guess, a respect for that dream space, a respect for maybe some wild dreams that take us sideways when we wake up. We wonder, wow, what was that? But just that introspection is really important. And it shows us the work that we're doing in the sleep space. I want to just share an example of a dream with a couple that I knew like 20, 30 years ago,
Mm,
and they were in my dream recently,
mm.
and there was some healing going on, and it was just very interesting, but it's because of this awareness of that dream space that allows us to see that. So it's happening whether we're conscious of it or not. It's just good to be conscious of it.
Oh yeah. Yeah, I just wanted to add one thing, like because you mentioned like people might have done it, and I do this too. I go in cycles where I'm like really focused on those sleep and dream practices, and then of course you may be doing other things, or you just like your body's tired and you want to rest. But the thing is, the metaphor is a bit like this: like there's spiritual beings, our guides, or beings who are kind of aware of us, okay, not in the physical. And then you make the intention to start paying attention to your dreams, like even if you've done the classes before, but maybe like took a break from it. What happens is a bit metaphorically like you're all on a server like Facebook, like on a Facebook page, and you kind of haven't been posting for a while. And then you intend to start working on your dreams. And it's like you put a little post in that Facebook page, and then they see, oh, they're doing this thing. This is the way I can communicate to them. So then they'll kind of post back through your dreams, kind of posting back on the Facebook page because you've sort of made the intention like I'm available. So I think that's what happens, and that's why it can be so dynamic. And the thing is, with the spiritual consciousness that I'm mentioning, like even the Arcturians, they don't have to show up as a figure in the dream. Like there might be an expectation, like, oh, if I'm going to work with Archangel Michael, I have to see something like a Michael in the dream, like, but the dream itself is Michael. So like it could be like meeting your like a couple from 60 years ago or 30 years ago who are your friends. That could be the Michaelic consciousness presenting itself through their consciousness, through the interaction and through the learning. I just wanted to mention that maybe people knew that, but so.
Okay, very good. Thank you. It's just fascinating. And so we invite those to join us in this next transmission series. And now I would like to say or open this up for a couple of questions. If anyone would like to ask Jean a question, go ahead and raise your hand in our participant box, and we can open this up and let you share your question. It's very interesting. The author of The Invisible Helper, one more time, was Ledbetter.
Nice.
Okay, C.W. Ledbetter. Just wanted to answer that question.
I'll type it in there.
Good. Okay. So if anyone would like to get a personal healing or talk about your experience, please go ahead and raise your hand now, and we'll get to you in just a moment. If not, we'll just wrap this up and say goodbye to everyone. But Jean, I just wanted to thank you for this. And on our 111222 day, your protocol for balancing your system, is it really what we're talking about today with the eat, sleep, move? I mean, this is what you do in your life. Is there any other thing that you do for the balance of the divine feminine and divine masculine energies?
Mhm, mhm. Yeah, I think that's great. I think maybe it's part of that still point. Of course, meditating is very helpful. Even a very short contemplation or prayer or some kind of stillness piece where you can kind of. I've been focusing more on the witness recently, which is sort of this non-dual consciousness of just witnessing whatever's showing up. Because like the things that are showing up tend to be objects of awareness, which we can sometimes tend to identify with, which are relative identifications. But the witness has always been present, even if you believe in past lives or future lives. The same witness consciousness will go through all your lifetimes. So if you can identify or just rest in that kind of pure presence of whatever's showing up, you can be centered. You kind of not in you're not in the outer cyclone. You mean like the whirling, where you get whirled around? You're right in the center when you identify with the witness. So that's also, I would add that to the protocol.
And so that witness in meditation, do you move to that witness level?
Yes, you could do it even now. Like a part of us now, a part of you now is, or a part of me. Let's I just do an example myself. A part of me now is aware that I'm talking, trying to figure out what next to say, enjoying, seeing you and seeing other people posting and interested. And so there's a part of me that's always aware. So you don't have to be in like deep meditation, and that's a way to stay with your divine self throughout all states of consciousness, like particularly during the waking day. You could just do this. Like if people don't really like sitting, like or sitting, because that's somewhat foreign, I think, in certain, I don't know if cultures is the right word. We kind of didn't grow up with that. Let's say maybe we are now, but with kind of just sitting for long amounts of time, like in meditation. But you could just do it throughout the day, like, oh, I'm playing tennis, but there's a part of me that's aware that I'm playing tennis, or I'm having a thought about my mom, but there's a part of me that's aware of that thought, even though I might be having a certain very strong emotion. There's a part of me that's aware of me having that emotion. That's the practice, and that's how you stay with the witness or this non-dual state during the waking consciousness.
Stay with the witness. That's beautiful. I think we're doing this right now. And so
Mhm.
as we go about our day to day, staying with the witness it. It's like a zoom out perspective.
Yes.
Yes, a zoom out perspective, which is really important in everything. And again, that really makes us responsible for the energies that we let in. So
Mm,
if we're witnessing it, we can say, this doesn't feel exactly right now. And so there's that detachment. There's a
yeah.
detach you're not like of it. You're not it's not you so much. It
Yeah.
that you see what I mean? It's like you don't let it get you so personally.
Exactly, exactly. And there's another aspect that also is very, I had intuited this, or maybe it was a message sent by maybe some helping beings, but like you get a text, I'll give you like the example. You get a text, or you get you're talking to someone, or something happens, and it really hits you the wrong way. And it might really be the wrong way. But like if you're not in the witness consciousness, if you're like right involved with your thoughts and emotions, you might like hit back. Like you might say something or text back or do something without like giving it that space that you were talking about. What happens is the higher beings who are working with you, let's just say your heart, holy guardian angel, if you can give it the space, then the spiritual beings who are supporting you have a chance. Like if you were the guide on the spiritual world working with someone, if the person goes right into it, you're like, oh wait, like I could have done something to change the energy. But if you give it the space and not like react right away, let's say on the physical plane, then your spiritual guides can help to change the pattern. Sometimes they call it the fate pattern. And then when you're kind of either in a more calm state, or even it's a couple seconds, or it could be more, then you can hit a better timeline or a better fate pattern.
Isn't that wonderful?
Yeah.
That's really great. That witness experience, that witness stance, that witness perspective, that's a very powerful tool. All right. Thank you, Jean Eng.
Oh, yeah.
Well, thank you everyone for being here. This has been a beautiful day, and we thank you for your light. It really matters. And we are getting there, and you are changing reality with your love and with your light. Jean, as we say goodbye, I want to allow you a moment to wrap up and share any thoughts.
Oh, yeah. I saw another question in the Q&A box. Should I answer it?
Yes,
Oh,
actually,
okay.
thank you for that.
Okay.
That's a good one. Here it is. I'll read it for you. Is there
Okay.
a difference between your sleep and dream yoga and the one of Tenzin Wangyal Rinpoche?
Oh yeah. Oh no, I've been highly influenced by the Tibetan sleep and dream yoga practices, and have been practicing that myself just out of strong interest, maybe even past life interest. But I do recommend that training if anyone's ever done either his online programs or the book. of the title. I think it's Sleep and Dream Yogas, Tibetan Sleep and Dream Yogas by Tenzin Wangyal Rinpoche. And he's been, I think Ling Chingma is the name of his institute in Virginia. So he's been teaching sleep and dream yoga for maybe 30, 40 years or more. And so, and yes, it's very similar with the spheres, the colored spheres, like in the, in the throat chakra for lucid dreaming. Then there's one in the head chakra, a white one, and then the blue chakra. And then you can also do the blue chakra for deep sleep. And then he has the one that's in the sacral center, or the root center is usually black. So it's very, yeah, we've been using kind of the similar framework. So anyone who either has a program, who didn't get that book yet, or who will, of course, get this program with this next Mastery Empowerment class, that would be a great reference book by Tenzin Wangyal Rinpoche, Tibetan Sleep and Dream Yogas. And then Andrew Holacek is the other person I would recommend. He has a book on dream yoga.
Beautiful. Great resources to go down in this consciousness journey. Yes, thank you. Okay, well, Jean, thank you. And again, I know you've got some closing comments.
Oh yeah, yeah. I'm glad we. You just wanted to say about the gratitude. I wanted to first thank Lauren. I was just reflecting. I think about of these causes and conditions. Like I forgot how many years ago we started together, but that was pretty much kind of the first online platform. Like I was really just doing live things, and like now, now just out of necessity and stuff. Most of it, like we were talking, chatting before, is online. So I have to thank you for getting me on that platform, and just that, that ability to do that, because that's just now that's how I am doing so-called my work, and so I want to really thank you for that, and this is sort of a reflection of that, and also thank everyone here. I think like with these changing times, just being able to connect, I think we can connect more around the globe. So it's like a global connection. So we're really creating a very positive vibration. And whether the effects are showing up, in the world now or at some point in the future, I think whatever we create in the inner world, which is sort of this esoteric idea, it will manifest at some point. So I'm so glad we could connect today.
Yes, thank you. This is why we keep on keeping on, and we keep on shining our light. And we all are like acupuncture points for the planet. Our love is doing that. Thank you all for joining us, and we hope you can join us for the upcoming event. Again, that link is here in this chat box and also on this webpage. Jean, thank you. We are in gratitude to you for sharing these frequencies, for leaving behind your PhD-ness in microbiology, and really bringing forward this wisdom of the Arcturian healing frequencies. Thank you for that. And thank you, everyone, for joining us. Namaste.
Namaste.